Hey everyone, it's Jack here, and you're tuning into The Flying Lap, F1 News, the go-to podcast for your latest speed fix on all things Formula One. We've got a sizzler of a race weekend ahead of us, and as the engines warm up and the teams huddle in strategy talks, the excitement is as palpable as the heat coming off the tarmac. So, pull up a chair, pop in those earbuds, and let's get rolling. Oh, and because I can feel the buzz and I know you can too, happy race weekend, folks. Stick with me as we shift gears and dive deep into the heart of the paddock to bring you the up-to-the-minute F1 news that's got everyone talking. Today's Saturday, May 4th, 2024. In Miami, it's all about the heat, the glitz, and the speed, and who better to turn up the pace than Max Verstappen? The Dutch sensation clinched pole position for the sprint race with a lap that was nothing short of electrifying. Despite wrestling his RB20 car through that tight chicane in the final sector, he clocked in at 1 minute 27.641 seconds, showing again why he's the man to beat. Mercedes, meanwhile, is facing a bit of a head-scratcher. The Silver Arrows, usually seen leading the pack, had a day to forget with both their cars out in SQ2. George Russell just outpaced Lewis Hamilton, placing them in 11th and 12th, definitely not where they're used to being. There was a moment Hamilton grazed the wall exiting turn 16, a costly kiss that says much about their current form, or lack thereof. And how about Lando Norris? The Brit showed glimmers of brilliance, topping SQ1 and SQ2, but when it mattered most, those soft tyres didn't quite stick the way he needed them to. Ultimately, he ended up fighting to keep Nico Hülkenberg at bay, rather than challenging Verstappen at the sharp end. It left us all thinking about what could have been if that first sector had gone his way. The streets of Miami have proven to be a stern test for all our drivers. But as we all know in F1, it's not just about handling the heat, it's about turning it into victory. And as the engines cool down tonight, the question on everyone's mind is, can anyone catch Verstappen? Or will the Miami sprint race be another display of his relentless charge? Stay tuned, race fans, the drama's just getting warmed up. Well, folks, let's dive into Charles Leclerc's impressive bounce back during the sprint qualifying here at the Miami Grand Prix. After a spin in the early stages on Friday that brought out the red flags, Leclerc was left with a frustratingly short practice run. That's enough to put a dent in anyone's confidence, but the Ferrari man shrugged off the setback as if it were just a bit of Florida rain on his visor. When it came time for sprint qualifying, Leclerc was out there with something to prove. And boy, did he deliver. A result worth cracking open a celebratory can of sparkling water for. Leclerc steering his prancing horse to P2, just 0.1s off the pace set by Verstappen, defying the odds without the benefit of valuable track time. Leclerc was straight out of the gates and onto the throttle, pushing hard despite only having one set of tyres in SQ1 to make his mark on. The Monegasque driver, laser-focused, drew on every bit of skill and determination to put in lap after lap, fighting to get those tyres just right. And you could almost hear the relief in his voice as he crossed the line, quelling the chatter about his recent qualifying performances and turning the tide on a weekend that had started with a frown. So, what's the mood in the Ferrari camp? One of cautious optimism, it seems. Leclerc himself is hopeful, dreaming of that P1 and a victory on race day. But it's not just about the glory up front, it's about keeping that confidence, maintaining the momentum, and consistently putting those tyres in the sweet spot. Now, with a P2 start in the bag and a car that seems to be clicking with the Miami vibes, Charles Leclerc looks set to take the fight to the front runners in the main event. If Friday's performance is anything to go by, we could be in for some fiery action come race day. Stay tuned. It's going to be one heck of a ride. All right, racing fans, let's talk about a certain Aussie who's given us a classic down-under comeback story. Yes, I'm speaking of none other than Daniel Ricciardo. After a season that's been more roller coaster than racetrack, Ricciardo pulled a rabbit out of the helmet at the Miami Grand Prix sprint qualifying, nailing down a fantastic P4. Now here's a man who's been under the microscope, with whispers about his season's shaky start getting louder in the paddocks. Let's not forget, there were already talks about possibly bringing in reserve driver Liam Lawson to shake things up a bit. But Danny Ric has silenced his doubters, at least for now, with a qualifying performance that's reminiscent of his top game days. And honestly, could there be a better place for a comeback than glitzy Miami? The V-Carb team handed Ricciardo a new chassis. Some skeptics might call it a placebo, but placebo or not, it worked like a charm. It seems that Ricciardo of old has revved back to life, hugging the walls and pushing to the limits in what was a solid lap that secured him a second-row start. And you could see that trademark Ricciardo grin, almost as wide as the Miami beachfront. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. The real test is yet to come in the sprint race. Starting from the second row is a breath of fresh air for Ricciardo, and it could be the vantage he needs to steer clear of the chaos and pocket some precious points. He's been candid about his struggles and the pressure, and a good haul here could be the shot of confidence he needs to climb back up where many feel he rightly belongs. It's going to be a scorching sprint race with the Aussie gunning from P4. So fingers crossed, and let's see if this impressive turnaround is the start of a renaissance for the Honey Badger or just a flash in the pan. Stay tuned. Let's turn our focus to the Silver Arrows and, in particular, Sir Lewis Hamilton. If you were expecting a smooth ride and rapid times from the Mercedes camp during the Miami sprint race qualifying, well, the reality presented something quite different. Hamilton, along with his teammate George Russell, found themselves in a bit of a skirmish with the clock, ultimately unable to break through SQ2. Yes, fans, you heard it right. The 7-time world champion himself had a lot to share about the team's performance, or shall we say lack thereof. Lewis candidly remarked that the half-second deficit they're trailing by is not just a one-off scenario. It's a profound reflection of where Mercedes truly stands amongst the grid this season. His words were pretty straightforward. We just have to accept it for the moment that we are 7/10ths off. He's imploring us, the followers of this turbocharged sport, to acknowledge the reality Mercedes is grappling with. No sugarcoating, no excuses. They're simply off the pace, at least for now. And while the first practice session in Miami had some signs of hope, with competitive lap times, it seems that illusion quickly dissipated come qualifying. As we look toward the sprint race, even Lewis himself is tamping down expectations, predicting a challenging scenario from the 12th spot on the starting grid. It goes without saying that being accustomed to seeing Hamilton charging through the pack and dominating the timesheets, this moment feels a bit alien. George Russell shares similar sentiments, acknowledging that the car just wasn't cooperative on those medium tyres. But, as always in F1, it's about looking forward and making improvements, something Mercedes is adamant about doing. So as they gear up for a sprint race bound to test the mettle of the Silver Arrows, Hamilton's realism paints a picture of a champion who is as much a fighter as he is a realist. It's a sobering view for all the Mercedes fans out there, but if there's one thing we know about Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes, they never shy away from a challenge. Stay tuned to see how this unfolds under the glitz and glamour of the Miami sun. And now, let's switch gears to a topic that's got everyone in the paddock buzzing, the points system debate. The hot question on everyone's minds: should Formula One extend the current points-paying positions beyond the top 10 finishers? At the recent F1 Commission meeting, the discussion really heated up. While a proposal for points up to 12th place was on the table, the consensus seemed to be, why stop there? The real meat of the conversation now is whether points should be given out even further back, potentially rewarding every finishing position all the way to 20th. Williams' head honcho James Vowles weighed in, suggesting that any changes to the points structure should be made sensibly and importantly. They should be decided upon and then stick. The room was united, he said, in aligning on a change that's best for the sport. But the devil's in the details. Is it 12th, 14th, 16th? Or do we say, hey, everyone gets a point? Mike Crack from Aston Martin brought a different angle, pointing out that F1's fan base is evolving. We aren't just speaking to the purists anymore, and it could be time to spice things up. Crack's all for giving drivers something to fight for, no matter their position on the track. McLaren's CEO Zak Brown isn't shy of a radical suggestion either. He thinks there could indeed be an argument made for awarding points to the entire grid. After all, every pass would then be packed with point-scoring potential, adding that extra layer of excitement. But the teams and the F1 chiefs are on the same page about one thing. They want to get this right the first time. No rushed decisions. A careful, considered approach to ensure the points reflect the competition and entertainment value that F1 fans have come to crave. So, what will it be? More points up for grabs could mean a shake-up that keeps the midfield and backmarkers fighting tooth and nail every lap of the race. Now that's a debate worth tuning in for. Stay with me here on the Flying Lap F1 News as we follow this story on how it unfolds over the season. And that's a wrap on another turbocharged edition of the Flying Lap F1 News. We've had polls, walls, hopeful comebacks, and even a rigorous points debate. Just another day in the fast lane. Remember, the rubber truly meets the road tomorrow, so keep your engines revved for all the post-race analysis. I'm Jack, waving the checkered flag on today's episode. Be sure to tune in next time for more high-octane news. Until then, keep your foot to the floor and your passion for F1 burning bright. Stay safe and take care, race fans.